Just moments ago here in the Capitol, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell was asked about a new expose that ran in 60 Minutes and in the Washington Post about a scandal that involves drug industry lobbying to push back against the DEA in order to kind of push pills on opioid addicts across the country. McConnell was asked by a reporter, what are you going to do now that there's been this expose and there's been all this attention on this issue? Are you going to revisit? Are you going to repeal this law? Are you going to reform this law? And Mitch McConnell said, hey, look, talk to the bill sponsors. Obama signed this law, it passed unanimously.
Now, is it to repeal the bill, changes to it?
Well, it passed unanimously, apparently with the approval of President Obama and his DEA. And you'll have to ask the sponsors about it as to what the way forward will be.
Now, if you're going to talk to these bill sponsors, one of them would be the drug czar. Representative Tom Marino from Pennsylvania was nominated by Trump to run the Office of National Drug Control Policy, which is known as the Office of the Drug Czar. He has now withdrawn his name from consideration after this expose came out. And so the question here is, was he too embarrassed to take the job? Did he just resign as a matter of honor? Or did Trump force him to resign? Now, on the question of the former, we can assume that that's not what happened because he introduced this bill that we're talking about now in public. This was not done secretly, even though it was done very quietly, and there wasn't a lot of press coverage around it. It was not done secretly. The bill was introduced publicly. The vote happened in the House in public. The vote happened in the Senate in public. President Obama signed it into law in public. Now, it passed unanimously without any debate, without any public debate. There wasn't any fanfare around it, and so it got lost basically until now. But Marino had never been ashamed of what he'd done before, so why is he dropping out now? Well, one of two reasons. Either Trump said, look, this is an embarrassment, you need to withdraw yourself, and he'd already been making public hints that he was no longer happy with this guy.
I did see the report. We're going to look into the report. We're going to take it very seriously because we're going to have a major announcement probably next week on the drug crisis and on the opioid massive problem. And I want to get that absolutely right. We're going to be looking into Tom.
And you can imagine it from Trump's perspective. He'd probably never heard of the guy before. Somebody told him to nominate the guy, because he outsources all of these decisions to places like drug companies. And if you're a drug company, who do you want to be the drug czar? Well, you want to be the guy who sponsored your bill and rammed it all the way through Congress. Or the other option is that the guy has common sense and he can read votes in the Senate. There is one issue right now that across the country scares the hell out of senators and congressmen, and it is the opioid epidemic. Nobody can avoid it from either party. And so no senator is going to want to get up and cast a vote for this guy to be drug czar after this expose came out. The details of it, you go watch a clip on 60 Minutes, you can read the Washington Post piece. The basics of it are the bill blocked the DEA from taking action against what it saw as out of control kind of wholesale pill manufacturers. If they would see like a huge shipment going somewhere that was clearly not on the up and up, they'd be able to quickly move and stop that. The bill basically stopped them from doing that, which allows the pill floodgates to just stay open. The DEA has been a horrible actor when it comes to the opioid crisis. When it comes to weed, crack, or coke, or even heroin, the DEA, they're all over it. They're ready to bust people, roll them up, bust the kingpins, lock them up, throw away the key. When it comes to pills, the DEA has a very different approach to it, and part of it suggests that perhaps street gangs ought to just be hiring lobbyists and pumping money into the DEA and into Congress. Throughout the 1990s and the 2000s, as the prescription of opioid medications was booming year after year after year, to the point where there were several prescriptions for every American person across the country, the DEA did nothing and simply kept lifting a cap. The DEA has a cap on how many opioids basically can be prescribed across the country, and drug makers kept bumping up against that cap. So every year the DEA would say, all right, well, let's lift the cap even higher. And maybe there is some benefit to that action. Who knows? But it is the only situation where the DEA was taking a liberal approach to drug supply. Everywhere else, they're cracking down. It's only when it comes to these, horrendously addictive pills that are being pushed by big pharma do they decide that they're going to actually maybe take a more humane approach to drug policy. The result, however, has been anything but humane. And people can ask questions about this, and we can talk about the very real issues of pain management later, but that's not what was going on for the DEA here. This is not the DEA being concerned about patients who are managing managing life with chronic pain. That's not what's happening. This is the heavy influence of an industry over a government agency, which is something we've come to understand and expect in all other agencies. It's just surprising to see it here with the DEA. So in this case, the DEA actually fought back. And a whistleblower from the DEA is the one that came forward to talk to 60 Minutes and the Washington Post. But the DEA still got railroaded.
Gretchen has a question that was on my mind before we started, is how come it seems like everyone Trump appoints is actually best suited to do the opposite of the oversight and protections and basically the mandate of the agency?
For Trump, when he's looking to appoint somebody to something, he's going to go right to the industry that they regulate. He thinks those are the people who are the most gifted and have the understanding of the industry, and they're the ones that ought to be doing it. If you look at Wall Street, he brings in Gary Cohn to be his chief economic advisor, who's deeply involved in the Big Short. The guy who he put on top of the OCC, the Office of the Comptroller of Currency, is this a guy who has spent his entire life working against the OCC, suing the OCC, representing banks who are coming after them, and he's just systematically tried to block it and other agencies from doing any regulation. And so, yeah, for this one, I assume he just went to the drug industry. Or not necessarily him, but the people that he tasks with doing these more minor appointments, because he's not going to be bothered with this.
Administration officials?
Drug czar. You think Trump cares?
Okay. So Rivers had a kind of poignant question. She said,